Karnataka, they had gotten together and written to the Women's Commission. And the Women's Commission actually took it up pretty quickly, and that's when we had some kind of leg to stand on and to report the case. At that point of time, the name was doing the rounds, but we couldn't quite go to town with it because there was a gag order and all kinds of things were happening. And also initially, it was hard to figure out what the hell was actually happening. The videos were floating around, yes, but we didn't know what the nature of those videos was. So it brought us to a point where we are like, okay, how do we describe this? And finding the right term for it was also a challenge because it took us some time to figure out what was happening and then to figure out the right ways to describe it. So coming to that part, there was a lot of, let's say, activists on the ground knew what was happening because they were getting the videos every day, and they were able to. They knew who all these women are, right? And everybody in Hassan, the place where the district where it has occurred, they know who these women are, right? So there was a lot of rumor and all kinds of things going on about how a lot of this is consensual. Because see, the videos are powerful, the visual is powerful, right? We do not know the context under which those videos were shot, the circumstances under which those women were when those videos were shot. And I think this is an important part of reporting the story, that this is a very, very powerful man that we're talking about. Even if he wasn't as powerful as he is, we shouldn't forget the fact that videos do not always let us know the circumstances under which something has happened, right? They can hide as much as they reveal, and perhaps even more. So that is something that we tried to always bring to all the reportage that we did, that this is a powerful man and that the circumstances that under which a lot of this happened, is something that, only the SIT and the police can investigate and should bring out. So that's one part of, reporting the story. And given the nature of the videos and the fact that Hassan is a small town of barely a few lakh people, and as one activist described it, I mean, there is one wedding and half the town turns up. So everybody knew everybody over there. So capturing that part, reaching out to these women was hard because they were under extreme pressure, and I think they still are. And we'd also heard a lot about some of these women being suicidal and so on, and which is one of the reasons why we had to be very careful when we reached out, and to also decide whether or not to reach out. As and when the women came forward to file complaints, we did reach out to them and try to get in touch with them and speak to them. But there was one person we did not reach out to, or we tried, but we couldn't because that person didn't want to talk. So we left it at that. And that's something I think that all journalists who have ever covered sexual violence have had to deal with. When you have to make these calls as and when things happen. Another thing that we try to focus on is the damage that this has done to society in Hassan. It's a small town, and everybody knows everybody over there. And nobody quite has a language to speak about this. It is either extremely harmful and hurtful language. When one of my colleagues, Nandini, she spoke to a woman, and that person was getting calls like, are you alive? In as a matter of surprise, the tone suggesting that she should have harmed herself at some capacity. So these are the kinds of conversations on one extreme end where things are like, people have watched the videos, they know who these women are, and they're being really, really hurtful and harsh. And On the other hand, you have young people who have zero knowledge about any kind of sexual activity who may have watched these videos and do not know how to handle it. So that is one thing that we thought we should focus on some depth to, capture what it has done to that small town, right? Like, this is a really powerful man who is a third generation politician, and his family runs that political party practically, the Janata Dal Secular. Initially, it started out with good intentions and so on, but now the party is, in the last 10, 15 years, the party pretty much exists only to promote that one particular family and its members. Yeah, so I think that this is broadly the things that I wanted to say. And if anybody has any questions, then perhaps we can, take it up when the question and answer session is going on.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Anisha. I'm sure we will come back to you with questions. We'll move on to Meeran now. Meeran Chadha Borwankar. You led the investigation into the Jalgaon sex abuse case, largely called the sex scandal, which is again very problematic. Even this one, when it begins to be called sex scandal, that takes away from the real nature of violence. So, what has really changed, if anything? 30 years down the line, you investigated this in 1994. What has changed in 30 years? And what are the loopholes in investigation which allowed, was it loopholes in investigation or loopholes in any other aspect of forensics or anything which allowed acquittal of, I think, everybody involved? So of the rape and abuse of almost 400 or 500 women, I think. So if you could just walk us through that and remind us of what the problems are and what the challenges continue to be.
Yeah, thanks, Laxmi. And I'm happy that there are two lawyers uh, because they can correct me or add to what I'm going to discuss. So when we were investigating Jalgaon sex so-called scandal, similar high number of women reported cases. Initially, nobody came forward, and then when 12 came forward, 6 of the cases got convicted at the session tribal stage at the special court, which was constituted only for trial of these cases. So out of 12 rape cases, we registered 6 did get convicted in the session court, but they got acquitted in the high court mainly. And here is the main issue. The benefit of doubt was given to the accused that registration of cases was very late. The earliest case was 6 months after the rape. So please, in this case also, I can see the same issue being taken up by the defense lawyers, and it would bother the judicial officers also, the delay in registration. Now, while investigating these Jalgaon cases, we also investigated or supervised investigation of Parbhani cases and Malegaon. In both the cases, we got conviction because reporting and registration of rape cases was immediately after rape. So please, all our viewers and the two lawyers here with us today, what I found was that immediate registration leads to better chances of conviction, as proved with these two cases which we investigated simultaneously along with Jalgaon cases. So second point is that each case must be a separate FIR. I'm sure SIT is going to do that, though in media we talk of it as one particular case. But for conviction, each case has to be a separate case. In Jalgaon cases, the medical reports after the blow due to late registration was the medical report, which started coming, medical certificates, habituated to sex. Now, after the amendments following the Delhi rape case, doctors have been advised, warned, instructed not to give these kinds of opinion and not to go in for finger test. But I am told in field, even today, they are doing the finger test and giving certificates which can be harmful for prosecution. So delay in registration, medical certificates, conviction at the session tribal stage, but acquittal at the high court stage, because mainly because of delay, and second because of the medical certificates. So we were also unable to register many cases, just like it is going to happen here also. You may in the media read 100 women sexually exploited. I am doubtful how many will come forward, and even we got suicide threats. I clearly remember a Jalgaon girl writing to me that I've been exploited, I'm married, in case you reach me, I will commit suicide. So this is there. This threat is very much, I can foresee that. Then collection of evidence in these cases will be very tough. And girls, victims, they contradict themselves so much, because this is not a case where sexual exploitation is on Tuesday or Wednesday and Thursday, the girl goes and report. This reporting is also late, and also the exact date, time, collection of evidence. I can see lots of challenges for the investigating officer. Whatever helped us was special prosecutor. I'm sure even Karnataka police will have the best of the prosecutors to help the investigating officers, not at the stage of trial, but hand holding even at the stage of investigation in such sensitive and delayed reported cases is essential. And not only would the victims be uh, contradicting themselves, this will also give a very strong alibi to the accused. I was wondering whether the two lawyers, Vrinda and the second friend, whether they can suggest that somehow we consider these victims to be in the custody of the accused, and whether that can bring the burden of proof on him than on us. So I would wait for their opinion in this. Then charge sheeting at the earliest. Special court must be constituted. Just now, before the our program started, I was quite distressed, and I was sharing with Vrinda that Rahim's case of murder is acquitted. Now the case belongs to 2002, and yesterday we were discussing about Salman Khan's road rage case causing loss of life, getting acquitted in 2015 while the registration was of 2002. So in case a special court is not constituted and the trial is not started expeditiously, we will be facing acquittals. So that's another point. Registration of FIR, individual cases, collection of evidence. Yes, one very important point, that victims must record their statement before magistrates. In our cases, they went hostile, which means for our audience that they did not support their own complaints in the court. So their recording of statements and recording of the statement of crucial witnesses before magistrates would also go a long way in getting successful prosecution with a good prosecutor, timely charge sheet, special court, and immediate trial, and recording of statements under currently under 164 CRPC. By then, this Bharatiya Act, this will come. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll come back with one more round of questions, but we'll move on to Poorna now. Poorna, are you there? Poorna? Poorna will speak about the specifics of this case, and then we go on to Vrinda for a broader view. Is Poorna there, Raga?
If yes, not, I'm just
yes, I'm
here.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you hear me?
It's a bit garbled, but yeah, go ahead. We hope it'll stabilize. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me? Hi.
Yeah. Go ahead, Poorna.
Okay, can I
Yes.
continue?
Yeah, go ahead. I think she's frozen or something. Should we move on to Vrinda and then come back to Poorna?
Yes,
Lakshmi,
yes.
I would also like Vrinda to address one more issue, that the presentation of videos as a technically sound evidence. I think that will also be very strongly contested by defense lawyers. Please cover this also, Vrinda. I'm looking forward.
Okay, so let's go on to Vrinda. And when Poorna is in a more stable, she's traveling on the road actually. So Vrinda, you go and we can come back to Poorna.
Oh, thank you. So I'll just take forward from what we have heard from Anisha and Meeran and the challenges that have been outlined both in being able to report on this as well as what kind of investigation is required. I think some of the questions that have already, the issues that have come up before us. One is the issue that what is the framework within which we are going to locate this kind of sexual exploitation. And that is really what we are, perhaps one of the languages in law that we can use is sexual exploitation, which is also a term that has resonance in the Prevention of Atrocities, Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes Act. As many of the friends on this call are aware, both in 1983 and in 2013, when amendments were made to the rape law in particular, one of the issues on which there was a lot of emphasis emerging from the experience of women's movement and women's groups across the country was on the category of power rape, or the coercive circumstances under which rape is committed. And therefore, we know that while in 1983, section 376, subsection 2, was added to the Indian Penal Code so that there was a notion of custodial rape, the classification of coercive circumstances in which consent would become immaterial and there can be a presumption. Well, let me rephrase that. Consent would not become immaterial, but the absence of consent would be presumed and a rebuttable presumption raised against the accused. That category, those listing of circumstances was further detailed, and that list expanded in 2013. And the reason I'm pointing to that is because of some of the questions that Meeran has placed before us, and Poorna will be able to perhaps tell us more. I don't have the details of this particular case at all. But some of the provisions that would, I assume, have been invoked is that when whoever being a relative, guardian, or teacher of a person or a person in position of trust or authority. From the news reports that I've read, and again, my information is based only on that, I don't have any first-hand knowledge of the case at all, that there are some persons who are relatives of the accused, Prajwal Revanna's. He's definitely in a position of trust or authority, even vis-a-vis domestic help, other staff working for him. So that would be 376 to subsection F. And the other relevant one for us would be K, which says being in a position of control or dominance over a woman commits rape on such woman. So if one was to, from what one has read about the videos, these are many of them or all of them are women over whom there is some kind of dominance and control, which can be of different degrees because it's a subordinate public servant, or because he's an MP, or it's a relative working on their land, or somebody working at their land or home or whatever. So those kind of sections would be invoked, where if the woman comes and says that this is what was done to me, this is the way in which sexual intercourse was forced, then there would be a rebuttable presumption that would be raised in law against him. Of course, we are jumping many hoops here. So I'm just going to go back a little bit on the whole issue of the FIR and the burden that is being placed on the women victims. The fact that there would have to be multiple FIRs, each one of them telling their own narration of what was done. But the registration of the FIR, if there are these videos, and there are these videos which have been circulated, and they've been deliberately circulated, part of a political game being played out, etc., etc. I'm not getting into that for now. But the knowledge that this form of sexual exploitation has been committed on innumerable women is something that is today in the knowledge of the police. And the law is very clear. If there is information that a cognizable offense has been committed, then an FIR can be registered by anyone. It's not a burden on the woman to go forward. Of course, the woman will have to give a statement if that has to move forward, and if that investigation has to have any lease of life. So of course, her involvement is necessary, but she doesn't have to trigger the investigation, is what I'm trying to say here. The question of delay is something that actually Supreme Court and other courts have dealt with repeatedly. In many, many, many cases, the delay has been condoned, and similarly, in many cases, the delay has not been condoned. The principle of law is very clear. If there is a satisfactory and reasonable explanation for the delay shall be condoned. A lot, as we know, then depends on what will be considered satisfactory and reasonable. Fear, loss of job, humiliation, social disgrace are all very good reasons for women to remain silent. And even as all of us, particularly women in Karnataka, try and combat this mass of sexual exploitation, the lid on which has been blown off now, I think we should also see this as an opportunity to develop an understanding on what is this kind of sexual exploitation and how wrong and erroneous it would be to for evidence to be appreciated, for court to assess the laid down principles through the lens of individual cases. Because here there are multiple axes on which the power differentia will have to be assessed. And I think therefore it's an opportunity to both educate the court, ourselves, and general public as to how to measure delay, how to comprehend what are the reasons for delay, which brings me to a point that decades ago Professor Lautika Sarkar explained to all of us, that law looks at everything through the lens of the reasonable man. The delay in reporting by a reasonable woman is extremely comprehensible, but the principle of criminal jurisprudence will have to hold a gendered lens to comprehend this. Moving further from this is what is going to be the evidence. Of course, there will be no medical evidence. This kind of sexual assault, I don't know over what period of time it has taken place, but clearly it hasn't happened in the last 48 hours. We all know that for a statement of fact. Many of those women are married women. Many have had children. We are talking, I believe, of a very a large group, even in terms of age. And therefore, to imagine that this is a case which is going to yield some kind of medical evidence as corroborative evidence, and the law on this has again been repeatedly laid down, that the woman's sole testimony is sufficient provided it is credible, consistent, and inspires confidence, and medical evidence is at best corroborative. Of course, here there can be no medical evidence, and therefore perhaps subjecting women to internal exams is only going to be more distressing and humiliating for them. Coming to the aspect of, I'll just touch upon the aspect of contradiction and inconsistency. And I think there is, again, this whole thing about how there should be no variance in what she says. Here again, I think we'll have to educate courts in how long ago, how there is trauma that is going to inform her testimony, whether her evidence, that statement that she gives to the magistrate, or if and when she comes to court. All that, there is still a huge gap in understanding trauma-informed testimony in our country. And as I say, I think these are also opportunities to educate the legal system, the entire criminal justice system. On the aspect of the videos, and Meeran raises a very important point here. There is a special provision of the Indian Evidence Act, which has been interpreted by many judgments of the Supreme Court, the bottom line of which is this: if any electronic evidence is to be taken as admissible in a court and treated as evidence, there is a particular way under Section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act that evidence will have to be handed over. The machine from which it can be on a pen drive, that's not a difficulty. Who is taking that pen drive, from which device, etc., etc. There's a lot of technical compliance in order to ensure that the evidence is not tampered with, doctored, etc., etc. And we can all completely see Prajwal Revanna's lawyers going ballistic about such things. And we'll very soon be hearing this in the media, and because he's shortly to return, and then the circus is likely to begin. So again here, the fact that those videos are made, if they are on his phone, if they are on his device, the Information Technology Act makes capturing videos of this kind as well as transmitting them an offense. So I'm sure the police is thinking along these lines as to how to frame the provisions. I think we are at a stage, again on the point of evidence, while each one of them may have, and as I said, others who've been reporting, etc., may know but much more than me. Wouldn't some women know about other women having faced similar sexual assaults by Prajwal Revanna? So while I may make an FIR of my own, if I'm aware that another woman has also been similarly sexually exploited, I can be a witness in her case and she can be a witness in my case, not an eyewitness, but a witness with whom she has shared or who is in the know of what has happened. And I think we need to work along those lines, because these women will need to, if such a scenario can be built. And since there are so many women, it's the kind of public secret that Hassan seems to have kept in its underbelly for far too long. And if they can support each other, that would be a very important way of giving confidence, courage, and solidarity that women can show towards each other. And whether it's the Me Too movement or anything else, we know that we derive courage from each other, and it's hard to battle this alone. I'll just end with one more point, and because Poorna will be speaking and she can probably tell us, while there is no doubt in my mind that this is, of course, sexual assault, etc., etc. Oh, wow, I've just had a power failure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
We can see you, but we can hear
Go
you.
ahead.
The video, because I don't want to look like a ghost.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we can hear you.
What I wanted to point out is that there is also a provision in the Indian Penal Code. It's always been there. The section that I want to draw our attention to, and I want us to just think about these things, because particularly as Meeran knows, when as investigators, if you can't make the highest case, you are still going to try and make some case, particularly in a situation like that, so that he doesn't escape. So you have section
354 IPC?
No. I'm talking about section 376, capital C. I'm actually trying very hard to switch on my torch of my phone. And when
No,
you
I'll read it out for you. 376C. You mean being...
No, I've got it. Okay. No, I'm talking 376 capital C, which is sexual intercourse by a person in authority.
Being on the management.
The difference is we are not talking about rape, but we are talking about sexual intercourse by a person in authority. So A says whoever being a person in authority or in a fiduciary relationship or a public servant. Ravanna is a public servant, etc., abuses such position or fiduciary relationship to induce or seduce any woman, either in his custody or under his charge or present in the premises, to have sexual intercourse with him, such sexual intercourse not amounting to the offense of rape shall be punished with rigorous imprisonment, etc., not less than 5 years, makes 10 to 10 years. Now, this is not rape, I know. So I'm not trying to be provocative here. I'm only saying that if the defense is taken, well, look at that video. Does it look like I am forcing her? She goes to her home. Next day she comes on her own, or next week she comes on her own. So where is the absence of will? Where is the absence of consent? In the Suryanelli case, the High Court thought a 16-year-old was consenting to having intercourse with, I can't even remember how many men. So I'm only saying that we need to ensure that there are other provisions of law which don't amount to the maximum, still entail a punishment, can work in certain facts and circumstances, and I will stop there.
Thanks, Vrinda. I mean, there's so many points you brought up, and I'm sure we'll come back to them. But we'll go to Poorna now to talk about the specifics of the Prajwal Revanna case. Yeah, Poorna, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes. We can hear you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry about all the trouble that I've been causing on this call with my internet. I basically just wanted to add on to a few things that Vrinda was saying. Largely, there are two broad points that I want to make. One is, of course, the public perception of the women that we are talking about, which is what I wanted to start off with on the question of consent. We feel more often than not that like people understand what is consent and the grays of it, and it's not black and white, so on and so forth. But in this particular case, time and again from all ends, in fact, including from state agencies, these women have been questioned in various ways. Like, for example, Kumaraswamy, in one of his statements, had said that one of the women who was allegedly in the video was seen sitting beside Revanna, campaigning for him during his entire campaign. She be sitting there, questions like that. Then you had no less than the National Commission of Women, which said, there are false complaints that are being filed. In addition to that, we should also look at what role the Kannada media is playing at this point in time to shape a certain kind of public perception around the case about whether the women went of their own accord, so on and so forth. And relentlessly over the onto the streets in Hassan, finding out people who are saying that you need two people for a tango, you need two hands to clap for something like this to happen, etc. And they're really pushing it out from all ends. And none of this is actually being challenged by the government, and the stoic silence of the government has actually enabled this kind of narratives. In fact, TNM was also reporting how these videos are being sold on social media, so on and so forth, and the government really hasn't come out to kind of challenge this, to stop this, and so on and so forth. One thing that I want to share here was recently there was a meeting where we were trying to discuss what civil society should do in the days forward for this case, for instances of sexual abuse and assault like this. And in that meeting, seemingly on our side also, we're categorizing these women into, these women, the first case that came out of this woman who said, I worked in the Gowda family's house for so long and I've served your grandfather, please leave me alone. That testimony became extremely, it was there everywhere. So in that meeting, people were saying, women like that are the real victims, but the younger women who were seen in the videos, they are not victims, so people seemingly on our side are also not clear about what is consent, not clear about how consent can be gotten under coercion, and also they are also in more ways than one circle back to this age-old patriarchy and victim shaming, so on and so forth. Why I'm saying all of this is also because one is, of course, it's shaming these women in public, but also it speaks to the magnitude of the problem that lies in front of us, that we're not just fighting a Prajwal Revanna or a Gowda family or one political party or so on and so forth. It's also people who are seemingly, or who are on our own side, seem to have it all, they've got it all messed up. So that is one thing that I just wanted to bring to this forum. The other thing is specifically, and all of this has added up, and in the initial stages, the SIT was really struggling to get women to actually come and complain. And they were exploring various other channels where, people could go and speak to the survivors, calm them down, give them reassurance, and then bring them in to complain. So these are not things that are happening somewhere in the void. It's having a direct impact on what the women are feeling. It's having a direct impact on what the women choose to do or not do. So that is one thing. The second thing is, I just wanted to, highlight a few things about the bail order of Revanna. In one of the affairs where he was arrested by the SIT, where the woman in question had alleged that she was kidnapped and her family didn't know about her whereabouts, and eventually she was
The father
also
Revanna, Poorna, right? Just confirm.
Yes, the father Revanna. Yes, and eventually was also forced to record a video saying, I'm absolutely fine and nobody's forcing me to do any of this and I'm in safe place, and so on and so forth. And he was arrested for the affair that was lodged in this case. And when you look at the bail order, there are many things that stand out, even on a bare reading of the bail order. And I'm not a criminal lawyer, so somebody who understands this better could possibly tell you what more is wrong or right with that order. But just 2-3 things, so the FIR has been filed against section 364A and 365 of the Indian Penal Code. Now 364A speaks about kidnapping somebody and causing harm or death to them, or threatening to cause harm or death to them in order to get a ransom. 365 is kidnapping somebody with the intention of wrongful confinement and also causing harm to them in that confinement. So in the bail order, the court dismisses charges against the father Revanna under 364A, saying that the ingredients are not attracted, but does not go into discussing 365 at all. So what I'm trying to point out here is a lapse on both sides. This FIR was filed before the SIT was formed. So it was most probably the local police that filed the FIR. We don't know if the woman had any support when she went in to file that FIR. But clearly, from what I understand, 364A is not attracted. So that was a lapse that could have easily been avoided. And bail could have been made harder if, the right sections had been invoked. And the court goes into great length to explain to us why 364A is not applicable in this scenario. But it just lets 365 slip by. They don't discuss whether the father Revanna has actually, acted to illegally confine this woman, so on and so forth. So these kind of very technical but very basic things are what we feel are going to make or break this case. And when this bail order came out, some of us, there was a real fear that we were feeling that even if Prajwal Revanna were to come back, if these are the kind of FIRs that are going to be filed where sections that don't apply are going to be invoked, and then that makes it easier for the court to give, let the person get away. Those are going to be real challenges for the investigation. There is also a little bit of anxiety in, the fact that the state government has been changing the prosecutors at crucial stages in the case. Of course, there's absolutely no doubt that the people who are being appointed are competent lawyers who we can trust with the investigation and with the prosecution, except that we don't know what the government is thinking. So far, we've not heard anything from the chief minister or the home minister. And these are all things that, we should have already gotten the act in place by this time. But I think we are still scrambling around, and I think the women are going to pay the price for this.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Poorna. We'll come back to you because you've again raised so many issues dealing specifically with this case. There are also many questions which had come in before, so we'll get back to you. But Meeran, I'd just like to ask you, unless Raga is collecting questions from the audience, but one of the questions which had come in earlier was, does it make a difference to have a woman police officer heading these teams? And does it make a difference to have, women more closely involved with the whole process of even collecting the evidence and making it towards the FIR? What has been your experience from the Jalgaon case onward in the past 30 years? Has it, because I know in the 80s, having women police was really, really important. What is your opinion on that? That was one question which came in.
So my clear opinion is that the team leader may be of any gender, maybe man or a woman, but the team must consist of women officers. I'll give you a specific example. When we were handling Jalgaon cases, and girls, as expected, were not coming forward to give their complaints, it was Mr. Arvind Inamdar who headed the team, who said that Meera should go outside the city and live in a place where girls don't feel threatened and they feel secure enough to walk up to her and give her complaint. I was staying in officers' mess in the police headquarters, and I resented that. I had taken my small child and I felt ये मुझे कहाँ भेज रहे हैं खेतों में, and that place was literally an old dilapidated building in the fields. So this very gender sensitive and very I would say a very good tactic was from a male officer. And it was a female officer who, in fact, was not very comfortable going outside and staying with a small child. So the team leader may be of any gender, but yes, when it came to getting the girls to me and making them talk, Maharashtra Police would send me women officers from Nashik, Pune, from or as far as Nagpur, Mumbai. So now Karnataka, I think, has about 12% of women officers. So they must form part of the team. That would be my view on this.
Another question I had also was, since this is a political case in the sense that there are very high-ranking politicians involved, there have been questions also about the timing of the release of these videos. Why was it released on certain dates? Why was it released after the polling date? Who knew about it? When was it? So all of these questions also apply to many of these larger issues, because larger cases, because most of these cases go on for months and years before coming to light. Maybe there may be one or two complaints, but in terms of the sheer number and the sheer massive scale of things, it emerges much later. So I wanted to ask you if you can reveal to us to what extent does the political class have an impact on policing? Your very frank opinion.
Yeah. Politicians interfere a lot. There is no doubt. They are responsible for our posting, for our promotions. So itna nahi hai, but posting where we are. But in this particular case, I see challenges everywhere. And like Vrinda has said, we have to come out of that black and white. Black is agar aapne you were exploited sexually, why didn't you report immediately? So that particular question and the threat of my apprehension that victims are many of the victims are going to not support prosecution, read with the fact that acceptance and admissibility of videos, how they were recorded, when they were recorded, are they genuine, are they doctored, all this I see lots of challenges from legal point of view. From politicians, I think उनकी कहानी खत्म है, उनको एक बड़ा वो चाहिए था expose, वो हो गया है. I don't think they'll interfere much now. And if Karnataka is serious, they can have a man or a woman of integrity heading the SIT with a big chunk of women officers, women staff being there.
There was one more, since no other question is coming up, I'll just read this comment to you about, a different approach, which maybe Vrinda and Poorna can also chip in later. Veena Shatrugna says, why don't we think of a class action and a special prosecution task force to be appointed and paid for by the government? Getting every victim to go through the experience any number of times during the trial will be traumatic. The Bhopal gas tragedy is an example. It did not do justice to all, but it set a precedence. A new precedence must be attempted without traumatizing the women any further. This would go quite different from your, almost comment or appeal that each FIR has to be distinct.
No, but Vrinda and Poorna, that's why I was insisting. Victim ka ek baar magistrate ke samne jawab le lo. Let the victim give her statement before the magistrate once, and then you investigate around that. Don't call her again and again. So recording the statement before the magistrate is also very important, and then you need not traumatize them. Can I please leave now?
Yeah, one last question to you, Meeran. Do you think having mental health professionals will be helpful in better understanding trauma and the contradictions that emerge as women share their testimonies? And I will add to it, delay. I mean, why do women delay? So do you think having mental health professionals would help?
Absolutely. There is no doubt about it. The girls and the women who will come, most of them, from what I read from the media, they are married, they have children. So they are totally traumatized. They need, and they'll be made to feel guilty. They'll be shamed. So definitely we need, besides the legal recourse, we definitely need mental health care workers, some support system. The last point I'll mention, we could not try Jalgaon cases in Jalgaon. We tried them in Pune because we felt that ladkiyon pe itna victims were being pressurized. And in fact, 2 victims said, we came to know that their marriages were fixed by the accused, and therefore they did not support prosecution. So women in Pune came forward. They hosted these victims for months, these girls. They would talk to them. They were not mental health workers, but these hosts were concerned citizens, and they felt injustice has been done. While hosting these girls, they would talk to them, make them feel not guilty. Guilt is also going to be a very big problem with these girls, shaming and making them feel guilty. So mental health and involvement of civil society, not only just now, but when the trial and during the trial also, we should stand by them.
Yeah, there are 2 last questions. I'll read out one, and then Kalpana Sharma will ask her own question. Question from Geeta. Did you find politicians interfering with court proceedings in the Jalgaon case? How did the accused get acquitted? How can we ensure this does not happen in the Revanna case? Maybe Kalpana, you can ask your question, and Meeran, you can respond to both.
No, I'll respond because my memory is short. So I think the lady joined later on that the cases were convicted by the session court. They got acquitted in the high court. One reason was they were acquitted not honorably. Benefit of doubt, that registration was late. The issue is very alive in this case also, that women are reporting and registering their cases late. And the medical certificate mentioned habitual to sex, which is going to be an issue here also. So both these issues, I feel, made the High Court give them benefit of doubt. Politicians did not interfere at the trial stage, but the accused themselves were politicians with money. So they bought the victims, they bought their families, they organized some compromises, including having the girls married. So that way, I would say they pressurized and won over the victims and their families.
Yeah.
Second question, please.
Thank you. Yeah, Kalpana, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, my question is not so much for Meeran and Vrinda, though I think both of you can address it because you've got the experience. From my reading of the media coverage, at least in the English language press, I just read today a report in the Hindu saying the whole thing has been diverted now to this issue of who released the tapes, and that's become the predominant thing, the political narrative, whether it was, the BJP guy or whether it was somebody else who released it and why and so on, and the political conspiracy behind the thing rather than what we have been discussing for the last hour. So what can be done about that? I mean, I think the media has a responsibility, but how do we get it across? And secondly, is there any other way in which this can be brought into focus that this is the real issue? This is what I want to just throw in for discussion. Yeah.
So, Kalpana, as far as I am concerned, I am more bothered about the custody of the video and how it is presented in the court, that it is accepted and admitted as a piece of evidence. The rest of it, kaun laya, political fayda liya and all, from investigators' point of view, I'm not very keen. I mean, like, for me, it doesn't have that much importance, but it's very important for me to be able to prove in the court that it's a genuine video recorded at X time, was in custody of Y, and is being produced as per the legal framework. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meeran. Thank you for joining us. It was really great having you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll continue. Varsha Bhargava has a question next. She can direct it to Poorna or Vrinda. Yeah, please go ahead, Varsha.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, we always I want like direction to the civil society and activists and all the students who are involved in this. We are all experiencing a collective angst. But then, right now, right to protest is almost we are waiting for the elections to be over, and we have a gag order by the universities also that we are not supposed to involve in any kind of protest. Now, in such case, what can the civil society do, or the students' organizations do, or the women's organizations can do? Because this case should not lose its steam, and at the same time, this is like Vrinda, you said that it's an opportunity for us to change the law about the consent, about the coercion that is involved in such kind of sexual acts. So, if we can have an action plan or some kind of direction that we can spread across, or we can form a group to have an action plan which can be spread throughout by doing a series of demonstrations or actions to keep the narrative fresh and to keep the narrative in the right path in favor of the women who are being victimized. So if there is any suggestions, if there are any suggestions.
Yeah, you want to take that, Vrinda or Poorna? Actually, Vrinda and Poorna both happen to be part of the larger women's movement. Not all lawyers are. So I think you all are well placed to respond to that.
Can I just respond to a couple of things that were said prior to this also?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I'll just begin with a few things before this was raised. When we talk about mental health professionals, of course, women who are going to be going through, if they manage to go through this process, and we don't know, it's a big if, and I think a lot depends on the state and how much support civil society can give. All that will determine whether these women will come forward or not. It's really not some woman sitting and deciding this on her own. So yes, they need counseling, they will need support, but I actually think we need to think in terms of, and it doesn't have to be done in in the way we think of mental health, one-to-one counseling. We need to, this is what feminist women's groups can do. How do you talk to that society? How do you talk to their community? How do you engage with issues of shame and stigma? And it's actually not just that woman who has to think. It's a family, it's a neighbor, it's a community. And one has seen this particularly when there have been caste atrocities, sectarian violence, communal violence, that kind of conflict. You really need to engage with the community. Women are not dealing with this as individuals. So even if we talk about bringing in psychosocial mental health professionals, and it's done the world over, India likes to think it's doing everything better than the world, then we need to think about how to bring this into the community. And if the government of Karnataka is willing to open its resources, one should tap into it. My second comment is on the, how, if and when, and that's why I actually don't like placing any burden whether they can or they can't. If the state gives confidence, if we are able to give confidence, they'll come forward. And they may change their mind later. It's very hard to go through this. But there is a judgment of January 2022 of the Supreme Court, Smriti Tukaram Badade versus State of Maharashtra, which is the Chief Justice of India's judgment, where it has been mandated that in every district of this country, there will be a vulnerable witness deposition center. So in every district, there would be, of course, I'm told that the case, the trial, etc., is being shifted, has already been shifted out. I don't know, but that's what I was told, out of Hassan. But the women can nonetheless, regardless of where they are, some women actually may not want to go out to Bangalore to depose. Some may want to. Each woman is going to be located and her circumstances will be different and will have to be individually assessed. But every district is required by law now to have a VWDC for a woman in a rape trial to depose through this electronically, where of course she will not be confronted with the accused, but she doesn't even have to be physically present. Of course, VWDC is not confined to only rape victims, but anybody who the court is satisfied falls within the category of a vulnerable witness. The other thing, again, on the point of how do you get confidence? How do I, if for that woman and her family to think that, what is at stake in going out and giving evidence against the most powerful family in that area? As civil liberties people, we have always opposed this, but sometimes one needs to use things from the arsenal of the state, which frequently externs activists from districts. And externment is done by the state. It can be done through court orders. It can, I think, be done through administrative orders. You'll have to check what happens in Karnataka. Why should these people not be externed from that area for a period of time? So, because how else can these families even have the space to think whether they want to depose? Where is that confidence, courage going to come from, unless there are signals that the state gives out that they are serious when they say they are going to go after Prajwal Revanna, and it's not part of some binary politics that are being played out for whatever end. Similarly, compensation, again, a signal from the state that we recognize and acknowledge the harm and injury done to you. it is not at the end of the trial. That's a fine. Under the victim compensation scheme, which Karnataka would have its state version of, on the registration of an FIR, a compensation is to be given. Here, this is known. So at least an interim compensation, which is, at least in Delhi, it is within the control of the legal services, district legal services authority to give compensation. There is a judgment of the Supreme Court in the Muhammad Harun case, where I had represented 7 gang rape victims of Muzaffarnagar communal violence, and the court gave them compensation when they said they had been gang raped in the violence without any trial even having begun or any charge sheet having been filed. So these are ways in which the state should be compelled to at least place before the women that there is some, that they can be, there's reason for them to feel they can come forward. And in middle of saying all this, I have totally forgotten what Varsha's question was. I'm so sorry, Varsha.
It was basically referred to, how do we keep the issue alive? Others are also putting in comments in terms of how should it not peter out, basically. But
I think that's a huge responsibility we have. And this is a pet gripe of mine. Please don't get me started on this. I think we also leave. And as a lawyer, I can tell you, our activist friends are not around. And the Bilkis case succeeded because people did not leave her side. And that's very, very important to remember.
Yeah. Other questions have been coming up, but I'd like to call Anisha to respond to Kalpana's question about how the media coverage seems to have now been deflected onto this, who released the video and so on and so forth. And, it seems to have flagged a bit in terms of the real issues. Also moving the whole, I mean, this is my question also, moving the whole thing onto, is Prajwal Revanna coming back? Where is he? What is he? This whole video which he released. How do we keep the focus on the crimes that he committed? Because a lot of reporting was just on the video without a comment. He's so isolated, he's so depressed and so on. I mean, it's really like shaping the narrative, and how can the media change that, or how can we push the media to change that?
Yeah, I'll come to that video first. This thing about him being isolated, depressed, etc. I mean, like, yeah, one of the things that we did, like my colleagues and I, when we reported the story yesterday evening, was to mention in the story, along with the video, the crimes he's been accused of, the fact that he did not mention even once the videos that he's been accused of filming. Thirdly, what we did was to talk about how the civil society response has been, and that they're going to be in protesting in Hassan on 30th. Yeah. So these are some of the things that we did to ensure that the context in which this video was made is not forgotten. And I don't recall, some media reports did, talk about that as well. But I think that's one of the ways in which we can keep the focus, not erase the context, basically, of what has been happening. And that's about the video where, he's talking about that. But I think on the whole, considering both questions that you raised, one of the ways we keep focus on the crime is to talk about who the accused is. And I think that finding out who released the videos is a relevant question. Not in the sense, but what I'm saying is that it's a relevant question because these videos have wrecked their lives, okay? These women's lives. That is one thing. Now, it's a double-edged sword in the sense that given how powerful this person is, they may have been sexually exploited, right? Now, that sexual exploitation, alleged sexual exploitation, has come to light. But at what cost? That is also something that, we need to consider. I mean, I don't have the answers to any of these questions. But the cost of these videos is also really high because now whatever it is, these women cannot go out in public. The stress and the pressure on them is really high. And one of the things that bothers these women the most, according to activists on the ground, is how do they face their children? Nobody can give them an answer to that. They don't know if their children have watched these videos. Even the people unconnected with any of these women or the videos, they're not having this conversation, right? You have young people, I mean, like you don't know what kids are watching, what young people are watching online, right? They're not emotionally or intellectually equipped to deal with these videos, right? Because it's not always evident. Like in some of the videos, you can hear some of these women begging and pleading, right? But not in all of them. So then the potential that these videos will be mistaken for consensual activity is there. And that is also how a large section, or at least a substantial section of people are interpreting these videos. And it is not just young people, it's also adults, people who know these women, right? People, party workers. Many of the women are said to be JDS party workers. So what these videos have done is that any woman, so the women in the videos are one thing, and the women's friends, their extended families, right? Now all of them are being suspect. Oh, she just hasn't been caught, right? She's friends with that woman, right? So videos will probably come out another day. That is the kind of mentality that people have. So this entire thing, I mean, I don't know, I forget who was talking about the spread of the videos. It's equally disturbing for me. See, the people who took the videos, the crimes, alleged crimes involved with regard to these women, then the filming of these acts, and then the people who leaked the videos is one aspect of it. But there is also another disturbing aspect that I think we don't talk about enough, is that people actively sought for these videos. Like regular folks, it could be like somebody down the street, right? Your neighbors, your friends, everybody has asked for and watched these videos. Some of them have, come across it accidentally, maybe not, maybe they knew what it was and still went ahead and saw it, right? This morbid kind of curiosity is definitely there. And that is something I think that people in Hassan are really, really struggling to deal with, because they don't know what to do about it to some extent. But I would like to point out one thing is that we need to keep focus on asking who leaked these videos, but frame it in the context of one, the crime that has been committed by those directly involved. Secondly, the crimes committed, by sharing these videos and all of that by the people who actually leaked it, right? So whoever leaked it, one of the questions that people in civil society are raising is that why couldn't you have gone and given it to the courts? Why couldn't you have reported it to the police? Say you suspected that these women were being sexually exploited, then you should have reported it to the relevant authorities, right? You can't leak all this kind of stuff in public. Like, look at the damage it has done. There was a way, there are laws. You can't claim in this day and age that you weren't aware of the law, right? These are political parties that we're talking about. In fact, 2 people who've been arrested by the police in connection with sharing the videos are aides of a BJP MLA, former BJP MLA from Hassan. Right? So you cannot dismiss this question of who released the videos entirely. But I would not frame it in the context of the blame game that politicians are playing over this. Because for them, their political careers and political one-upmanship is important. But that's not what is important for us as journalists or as civil society members, right? Or perhaps activists. So one way of keeping focus on the crime is to ask both questions. Who released the videos? And where is this man? Unless we keep asking that question as journalists or as civil society members or as activists and lawyers or whoever it is, you cannot keep up the pressure on the government to find this man and bring him back, right? So unless we keep asking that, I mean, you're going to let you're going to let the pressure fall, and I think that it's important for us to keep the pressure up.
While you're
sorry, just one last point that I would like to make.
Go ahead.
A letter was released today. I think perhaps Poorna can talk more about it if she's been part of it. There's a civil society coalition that's come together, which wrote an open letter to these women and also to, well, society in general, saying that you need to keep focus on the fact that you cannot assume consent, right? Regardless of what might appear in the videos, regardless of what you personally think, you cannot assume consent, because we live in a patriarchal society where, you know, the dice is already loaded against women. And you need to remember that this man is a politically powerful man. And therefore, we should not respond by thinking in terms of consent, but we should think about it in terms of the power that is loaded against these women, the fact that these women have been victimized, perhaps originally, you know, coerced into sexual acts, etc. And also when their videos were released and leaked and, you know, just made open for the whole damn world to see, right? So they in fact did write a letter like that, and perhaps Poorna can talk more about it. So I just wanted to mention that because I think this point needed to be made, and Karnataka civil society has made that point. In fact, the way in which they've been mobilizing around this issue is quite remarkable. And there are meetings every day all across, and practically in every district, where 10-15 people turn up, and they are printing posters and pamphlets and, you know, releasing them. And, you know, I think I mean, we don't know how many people are going to turn up in Hassan on 30th, but looks like it's going to be a pretty strong response for now.
Anisha, just one last thing. Even earlier, someone had asked this question about, aren't the people who watch the videos and of course share them, or even watch the videos, culpable in the crime? And Amo has added also about the media using footage from the videos without blurring the faces. Isn't that also something that we need to put up pressure on media organizations that did that?
Yes, that we do. In fact, my colleagues Shivani and Nandini and I, you know, three of us did a story on the media coverage, and it is spectacularly bad. You have them using unblurred visuals of these women. I mean, they're playing it almost like, I'm sorry to use the word, but it's almost like pornography. You know, unblurred visuals where you can see a woman, you know, on loop, right? Disrobing and undressing and so on. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, this is terrible to watch. I mean, everybody watches the news, right? I mean, we shouldn't be doing this. So yeah, I mean, I suppose the Women's Commissioner, and I did ask her once that, you know, are you going to take any action on this kind of reportage or on the videos being shared? And she said, yes, I've written to the police, and that was the end of it. Sorry, what was the other question that you raised, Laxmi?
No, you've covered it more or less about culpability and what can be done. We are going to stop in about 8 minutes from now. So I'll give all of you one more round if you'd like to add. But before that, Poorna, if you can address some of these questions about civil society mobilization. Also, Amulya Shruti, watching it on YouTube, says, what tangible actions can laypersons and civilians take to help this case? That was the question. And also, either of the lawyers here, Poorna and Vrinda, can address this idea which Veena has put up about a class action suit. Is that a possibility? You know, because we've talked now for the past hour about the problems with the FIRs, the kind of sections which are probably going to be blown apart by the defense lawyers. So what are the other ways in which we can approach justice through this? So if Poorna, you can go first.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not able to switch on video because I've moved into a very dark road.
No problem.
But class action question to Vrinda, because I don't think I have enough experience to respond to that. But in terms of the civil society, I was thinking of three things. One was, of course, what Anisha was talking about the letter, and there I see women's groups and civil society playing like an important role, because we are saying something that the system is not telling the women, that it's not their fault. The SIT, of course, did put out a very good letter at the beginning of the investigation, encouraging women to come and file complaints. But the rest of the system and how make sure that the message goes across to women that we will stand with you if you complain, and we will be there with you to see through. The second thing is definitely what again Anisha was talking about, keep the issue alive. We've had a protest in Bangalore, we've had discussions about it in different forums, etc. And then of course Hassan is happening on Thursday. But this will not be enough. There was also a small event in Dharwad today, another district in Karnataka. So we really need to keep the pressure on, and we need to keep talking about it. One thing, like Vrinda mentioned, which also worked with Bilkis, was when the convicts in Bilkis's case were released, a group in Mumbai had actually done a signature campaign hitting the streets to talk about what had happened to her, if people knew, etc. And we replicated that effort here in Bangalore. And to our shock, most of them didn't know who was Bilkis. They didn't know what had happened to her, and they had absolutely no clue that the convicts were released. So in such a scenario, it will be important to keep talking about this to the public, because we are all doing work on this 24/7. We feel that, oh, okay, everybody knows, the details of the case are out there, these are all known facts, etc. But I'm afraid the common person there on the street does not really know the nitty-gritties of the case, and we need to keep talking about it. The third thing I thought that we've done, which I think we should keep trying efforts like this, is when we went to the Women's Commission here in Karnataka, we pushed the commission to have a meeting with all media houses in the state, and bringing to their attention the NBSA guidelines and how you're supposed to report on cases of sexual assault, etc. Groups in can also be pulled up for using his official residence to commit crimes of this grave nature. So we should also get a little creative in the way that we approach some of these things, and these are the spaces where civil society can come in, according to me.
Thanks a lot, Poorna. I think that really gave a summary. There's a lot happening, and I think the key point everyone's making is that it needs to keep happening, because we've seen how long drawn out these cases are. The Jalgaon case went on and on and on, and it's only after like 10 or 12 years that there's a conviction, then an appeal, then an acquittal, and one has to stay with it. I think Vrinda, more than any of us here, would know that the number of years, decades rather, it takes to pursue a case. So Vrinda, any last words from you? We have a couple of minutes left.
I actually think that there is one point where civil society, journalists, lawyers can come together. When we are talking about what is consent, it doesn't have to be what informs the mind of the court is how we develop an argument and a narrative and a discourse in understanding what does it mean for a woman to consent. And we've seen that shift in the law. The shift in the law is not happening because people sitting in the courtroom suddenly have got enlightened. Their enlightenment is only going to happen if we are going to shine the torch from the outside. Can there be, I mean, I would love it to happen everywhere in the country, but at least in Karnataka, both in Kannada and in English, have columns which talk about what is consent. What does it mean to give consent to a man who determines your social, economic, political life and can actually have you eliminated, your land taken, whatever he wants? What does it mean to say no to such a person? And we really have to help society and the court understand consent. This whole understanding, unless the gun is to her head, unless she's been killed, is completely, it doesn't speak to any woman's life. Least of all, a scenario where he's actually, he and his family run the place. So how do we talk about it? Talking about it in the public domain will shift the understanding in the courtroom. It's not going to come out of the bright head of any lawyer or any cop. It's really work that we need to do together. I totally agree with Anisha about the very serious concern on these pen drives. You want to raise an alarm. You want to make political mileage out of it. You did not bother to pixelate the faces of those women. You care a damn about the women. This is some other game in which we need to have no truck. And it is pornography. And it is being consumed as pornography. We saw how that video was released of what happened in Manipur when those women were being stripped and gang raped, etc., by the mob. And these are videos which are providing titillation and are lurid in nature and are meant to do that. So not pixelating their faces and therefore causing havoc in their lives is something that needs to be taken very, very seriously. On the class action aspect, which Veena has raised twice, class action is obviously not a criminal proceeding. Class action is by its very nature, you are asking for damages. Law understands damages largely as monetary damages. So it's so if you have caused harm or injury, you took the example of Bhopal, which actually is not the best of examples because the government did not allow the victims to be the ones who are championing their cause. The government comes in between and decides how much they want to take and what they're going to do with it, whether it's making a hospital miles away from the basti that has been impacted in Bhopal. So we are then talking of damages. Now that's a different conversation, but how do we even reach that threshold that Prajwal Revanna owes anybody a damage? Do these women see themselves as a group? I'm not sure that that kind of legal understanding will fit this scenario. And but I do think that here you do have a situation where the understanding of sexual exploitation, the understanding of power, the understanding of consent can be dramatically altered if we keep this conversation going.
Thanks, Vrinda. That really, I think, clarified even about the way forward. We've overshot time, but there's a last question which came in, and I think Anisha and Poorna can probably respond. When we're talking about power, it's not just political power. People have asked, and it's been in many of our heads, to what extent have caste equations played out in this case, in terms of who the victim survivors were, who the enablers were, and of course, the perpetrators. Maybe Anisha and if Poorna would like to add. This is the last question. We'll wrap up after they respond.
Poorna, would you like to go first? I'm glad somebody brought this up because I forgot to mention it earlier. But caste does play a huge role in what has been happening. Not per se the direct assaults, alleged assaults, but in terms of how much power the family has. They come from a landowning caste. It's called they call Bokalikas. It's a landowning caste, feudal, highly feudal, and they were socially dominant. And this particular family,
I mean, this is
Go on, Poorna. Go ahead, Anisha. I think Poorna is on a lag. She can't hear that you're speaking. Go ahead, Anisha.
Okay. So, yeah, they're a socially dominant landowning caste, and concentrated largely in parts of southern Karnataka. So that geographical concentration also gives them a lot more power than it would give, perhaps any other community elsewhere. Not that other communities don't have such power, but that is one aspect of it. And one of the reasons why this entire thing is so complex is because of the nature of the assaults, right? Many of these women are party workers or wives of party workers. So how do you take this on? And I think Vrinda was talking earlier about, about witnesses, right? That the women who've been assaulted can support each other as witnesses. But as far as I know, one woman did not know that this was happening to other women. All of this came out only when these videos came out. How much of it other people knew, we still don't know. A lot of it, from what we hear, from what my colleagues and I hear, is that nobody had any idea that this was happening and for how long it has been going on. Even the women themselves, the ones who have complained to the police about being sexually assaulted, they also cannot place, they don't remember dates and years, the chronology of it, or that kind of stuff. So it's hard for the cops also, like, to probably may affect the investigation, we don't know. But caste did play a role in how much power this family managed to acquire, because so many JDS members are Vokaligas. When they started out also, former Prime Minister Deve Gowda, who started this party, he mobilized support from Vokaligas, right? And it's also, some of it is by default, right? It is somebody from your caste, so you vote along caste lines, right? One thing that people generally tend to look at wrong is that these dominant, powerful castes often vote as a voting bloc. They are the voting blocs, not the marginalized castes. And once Deve Gowda began acquiring, became a politician, became chief minister, prime minister, and so on, both these things fed into each other, right? The largest of your political power gets distributed among, people of your caste, your community, those who are close to you, and so on. So it is not, so the community, from what we can make out, most of the women in these videos are Vokaligas, right? And the community as a whole has benefited from this political largesse that that the Gowda family has acquired. And that also makes it very hard for them. Because of the caste connections, they became party members, they supported the party. Even today, you will find people saying, oh no, Deve Gowda should not have had to see this in his old age, right? So, I mean, how is that relevant? But people do think like that. So then there is also a naturally patriarchal mindset, that patriarchal environment that we all are part of, which tells you that it must be the woman only who's done something wrong, right? So all these things feed into the kind of ostracization and victimization that these women are going through, apart from the original crimes that they may have been committed against them. So we don't know the level of coercion involved. We don't know so many things about this case, right? And the police are also finding it hard to get any of these women to talk to them, because they're all party workers, and the ostracization that they face also acts against them, right? So in that sense, even as Poorna mentioned, the SIT came out and said it is unusual for the cops to come and say that you are not the perpetrators here. You are victimized, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, of police coming out and saying that, and then the civil society also made a similar statement. So I think that message needs to go out more, not just to the victims, but also to the larger public as a whole, so that we think of consent, we think of power and authority and all of these things, as everybody like Vrinda and Poorna have also talked about. So yeah, I hope I didn't talk for too long. I'm sorry.
No. It was fine. A very much needed intervention. Poorna says she doesn't want to add. You've covered all the points. So unless Vrinda, you have a last point, we can end here. And do you want to add something?
I just want to say that, we really need to think about these cases in a different way. It's good to see, as Anisha said, it's very unusual to have an SIT. So all that is working well. But the delay could run into years. Courts are going to be very conservative in their approach. They actually they don't believe women. They think of themselves as getting trapped. Similarly, they see all these as traps where they've had their share of fun. They've got something out of this man, and now because the video is out, these women are lying. That's the bottom line in which most are going to think. How do we then explain the delay? How do we explain fear? How do we explain all this? How do you get expert witnesses? I believe that, the way women's movement globally actually dissected cycles of domestic violence. We have not done that for rape. We have not understood rape. We think of rape as one incident and it's over. It's actually, there is a whole ecosystem working around it, around this kind of power rape. We need to develop that granular analysis, bring that into the courtroom, have writings on it. That is how it entered the courtroom in domestic violence. And I think we have so much evidence, experience in this country. We need to start placing that ahead of us.
Yeah, no, that's really crucial. And I'm glad you brought it as, something one can do concretely. Otherwise, one is pretty helpless, almost watching on the sidelines, the way this has been unfolding. So I think there are a couple of calls to action, which I think are very, very useful in terms of keeping track of the case. Meeran's points also about the investigation and what needs to be done. I think if we're able to convey that to a larger public, that would be useful. And of course, the media, in terms of what are the things one needs to keep, tag of not just now, but months and years in the future in order to get any kind of conviction. Also, your call to the women's movement, the media, and civil society about evolving notions of consent beyond a yes and no thing or beyond the law. I think that's a very useful, appeal and urge. And I think we all are doing it in bits and pieces, but there's a need to bring it all together. So I'm glad that came up as well. And also supporting the whole civil society effort, which is, I think now one realizes what a long haul it's going to be. And we do need some kind of markers along the way to keep us on track and keep the case alive in terms of justice seeking, not to keep the trauma alive. And I think that is also a bit of a contradiction, because I remember even in cases where we go back to survivors, they're like, why are you raking it up now? We've gone on with our lives. So I think this dichotomy of keeping the issue and the crimes alive, seeking justice, and allowing the victim survivors to just get on with their daily lives with whatever support we can provide. So thank you all. We'll end here. It's been a great discussion, and we'll call upon you, I'm sure, from the NWMI if we need any expert help in any of these initiatives which have sort of emerged.